Hey there and welcome. Today we're going to break down a really powerful tool for any leader who's ever felt pulled in a million different directions. You know the feeling. In a room just buzzing with competing demands, who do you actually listen to first? Well, it's called the Stakeholder Salience Model, and it's all about finding some clarity in all that chaos. I mean, just think about it for a second. You've got shareholders hammering on the door for profits, employees who want better pay and conditions, customers who need your support, and regulators breathing down your neck about compliance. It's a lot. So how in the world do you decide who and what really truly counts? That is the exact question we're going to dig into today. All right, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll talk about the core problem this whole model was designed to solve. Then, we're going to get into its three secret ingredients: power, legitimacy, and urgency. After that, we'll see how you can actually map your stakeholders, walk through a simple 5-step playbook, and we'll even look at some of the model's blind spots before we get to that big question: who really counts? So, before this model showed up, stakeholder theory was, well, it was kind of messy. It was great at identifying who could be a stakeholder, your customers, your suppliers, the government, local communities, but it gave you no real way to sort through that giant list and figure out who you need to pay attention to right now. And that's where these three researchers, Ronald Mitchell, Bradley Agel, and Donna Wood, came in. Back in 1997, they developed the Stakeholder Salience Model to tackle one single question: how do we figure out who and what really gets priority from managers? And their whole solution is built on just three core ideas. They basically said that a stakeholder's salience, how much they pop out and grab your attention, all depends on whether you, the manager, see them as having power, legitimacy, and urgency. So let's break each of those down. Okay, first up, power. This one's pretty easy to grasp, right? It's just the stakeholder's ability to make your company do something it wouldn't have done otherwise. And this power can show up in a few different ways. It might be coercive, like a government threatening you with huge fines. It could be utilitarian, like a massive client threatening to take their business elsewhere. Or it could even be normative, using more symbolic influence to get their way. Next, we have legitimacy. Now, this isn't just about what's technically legal. It's more about whether a stakeholder's request is seen as proper or appropriate by society. For example, a local community complaining about pollution from your factory, they have a legitimate claim because it's based on widely held beliefs about public health and safety. And the third piece of the puzzle is urgency. This is all about the clock. An urgent claim is one that's both time-sensitive and really, really important to that stakeholder. You can kind of think of it as the act now factor. A sudden safety recall or an impending regulatory deadline, that's what injects urgency into a situation. So here's the key. You don't just look at these three things separately. The real magic of this model happens when you start combining them. By figuring out which stakeholders have one, two, or all three of these attributes, you can create a super practical map that tells you exactly who should be at the top of your list. This framework basically sorts everyone into three tiers. At the bottom, you've got your latent stakeholders. They only have one of the three attributes. Think of a powerful but currently silent investor. They're dormant. In the middle are the expectant stakeholders, who have two attributes. Your board of directors is a perfect example. They've got both power and legitimacy. And then, at the very top, you have your definitive stakeholders. These are the ones with all three: power, legitimacy, and urgency. When a regulator issues a compliance order, you better believe their demands go straight to the top of your to-do list. But here's what's so important to remember. This map is not set in stone. It's constantly changing. A stakeholder's status can shift literally in an instant. A local community might start with a legitimate claim, but not much power or urgency. But then, an event like an oil spill happens, and suddenly they gain massive urgency, and their salience just skyrockets overnight. Okay, so the theory is cool. It makes sense. But how do you actually use it? Well, the good news is this isn't just some abstract academic idea. It translates directly into a really simple 5-step playbook. The playbook is super straightforward. Step 1, inventory. Just list out everyone who could possibly be a stakeholder. Step 2, assess. Go through your list and rate each one on power, legitimacy, and urgency. Step 3 is to classify them and put them on your map. Step 4, strategize. You're not going to treat everyone the same, right? Definitive stakeholders need constant communication, while the latent ones might just need to be monitored. And step 5, and this is probably the most important, reevaluate. This is not a one-and-done thing. You have to keep updating your map, especially after big events. Now look, like any framework, the Stakeholder Salience Model isn't perfect. It is incredibly helpful, for sure, but to use it smartly, you've got to be aware of its limits and some of the common knocks against it. On the plus side, its strengths are obvious. It's dynamic, it's really simple to understand, and it's incredibly practical for figuring out where to spend your limited time and energy. But on the other hand, it has some real critiques. The biggest one is that it's subjective. It all comes down to a manager's perception, and we all know perceptions can be biased. It's also been criticized for having a thin morality, meaning a claim can be legitimate without being truly ethical. And finally, the original model can sometimes miss how stakeholders team up in coalitions to make themselves way more powerful. So, after going through the whole model from how it started to its criticisms, what are the biggest lessons you should walk away with? Let's boil it all down to the key takeaways for any leader who's trying to figure this all out. First, always remember that urgency is the wild card. It can change the entire game in a heartbeat. Second, one attribute isn't enough to get your full attention. It really takes 2 or 3. Third, and I really can't say this enough, you have to reassess your map all the time. This is a moving picture, not a single snapshot. Fourth, be mindful of that thin morality issue. Smart leaders pair this model with a strong ethical filter. And finally, think of this model as a starting point. It's the gateway tool that tells you where you need to begin a much deeper conversation. And that really brings us to the most important question of all. This model is a fantastic tool for figuring out who has your attention right now, based on their power, their legitimacy, and their urgency. But it leaves you, the leader, with a much, much bigger question that only you can answer. Who should have it? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.